everybody. I'm Stacy with New Creations by Stacy. I'm a Dixie Belle retailer here in Madison, Alabama at Blue Vintage Market. I'm going to give it just a couple minutes for some people to jump on, and I'm going to go ahead and log in on my phone over here so I can see comments. So when you guys come on, just say hey, where you're watching from tonight. Give me just a second. I should be able to see the comments here. We also have Dixie Belle on with us tonight to help answer any questions. So hey, I see some people on. And I am logged in, so perfect. I don't see any comments. Oh, hey, Dixie Belle. Alright, so I'll go ahead and just get started, talk about what we're doing tonight. If you guys have any questions, definitely post them. I'll try to watch through the video and answer any questions, but if I miss anything, I'll go back after and comment and answer any questions that you have there. So hey, Nancy, thanks for coming on tonight. So tonight we're going to be working with some Would You Bend, as well as we're going to do some painting. And in the description for this, I do have all the products we're using, and I'll talk about that in just a minute as well, but you can reference back to the description to see those. And then, oh, hey, Patsy. Hey, from Australia, Julie. Wow, we've got people from all over tonight. So, on here, we're going to start by putting the Would You Bend on. And this is a custom piece. I don't know if she's going to be watching tonight, but I've done a few pieces for this client. And in the room, this is actually going in her office. So in this room, we actually have another statement piece that I did, as well as some wall art. I redid the frames and the mats in the Stormy Seas and vintage duck egg for that. And for her desk that's in the same office, it is actually the Gulf. So that's the color that we're going to blend in with the Stormy Seas on this dresser tonight. And I'll talk about that in just a minute as well. Once that's done, the side of the desk, she's a quilter. So we made some like a push pin bulletin board on the sides and covered it with this material. It's in quilting blocks. So I'm going to end up coming on, and I'll bring it closer, and adding some of these colors in. So this is going to be a project we're going to work on a few weeks in a row. So I've got some red. We'll add in some apricot as well as some mint julep. So what we've got going on right now, we've got Stormy Seas, we've got the Gulf, and then I'm blending some Fluff in also. So we're going to get to that. I've added most of the Would You Bend, but I wanted to go ahead and add a couple of pieces here I saved, just so you guys could see how to put that on. And you can also order any of the Would You Bend products through the affiliate link. You can also find your local retailer. It's not a requirement to carry Would You Bend though, so you may want to contact them first before you go into the store to purchase any of this stuff here. Oh, I know, me too, Nancy. Oh, hey, Angie, she's watching tonight. That makes me even more nervous, but I'm so glad you're on. So, yeah, she's had some really cool pieces that I've got to do, so I'm happy about that. So, let's go ahead and start with the Would You Bend. So if you're not familiar with Would You Bend, they just look like regular appliques. I've broken this one, but that's okay because we're actually going to customize it a little bit. So they're just appliques. They don't bend or anything, but once you heat them up, you're able to go around curves like you see here. This is a curved piece. And I've also got one that I'm adding onto the curved foot over here. You can see it on that side. And once we get to the end of this, I'll bring you guys in for a close-up so you can really see how it all comes together. So with this last piece that I'm putting on, I'm not worried that I accidentally broke this off. If you try to manipulate it when it's not hot enough, this can happen. If I wanted to fix it, I could. I would just heat it up with my heat gun, And then you can kind of, it softens it up and you can meld it right back together. In this case, I'm leaving it broken though because I'm going to cut some off here. All right, I'm just looking to make sure. Oh, thank you, Nancy. I'm just looking to make sure I'm not missing any of the comments. Oh, you're so sweet, Angie. Oh, thank you, Marlo. All right, so this is a little bit longer where I broke it, so I'm going to still come in and cut it off. So the first thing we're going to do is just take your heat gun and we're going to heat up the wood you bend so that I can manipulate it. I also have some wood glue here. This is Tight Bond wood glue. It is sold by Dixie, Belle as well, and I do carry that at Blue Vintage Market, but again, you would want to check with your local retailer just to make sure they have that in stock as well. So I've got my wood glue and I've got a couple brushes here that we're going to put the glue on with, but let me go ahead and get this heated up. Oh, hey from Australia again. It's late there for you guys, isn't it? All right, so it doesn't take long to heat this wood you bend up, just a couple minutes. Oh, thanks, Lisa. You know, this last month, I have a new granddaughter, so I'm kind of juggling a few things. So I haven't been on this page a lot this last month. But I'll be on every Sunday night this month, except for the last Sunday of the month at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. And then I'm usually on the Chalk 101 Paint Company page too. So I'll be working more on this piece on both of those pages. Alright, so this should be warm enough. So once I've got it heated up, you do want to work with it quickly, but you can reheat it. But see how it starts to bend and you can manipulate it? So really quickly, I'm going to take one of my brushes here and I'm going to liberally apply my wood glue. And I'm trying to do it quickly because I don't want to have to heat it up again with the wood glue on it, but sometimes I do still. Especially when if it's a flat surface, I mean, heat it up once, stick it right on, no problem. But when you're working with a curved surface, sometimes especially if you're trying to customize it, sometimes you do have to heat it up a little bit more. And I want to just make sure that I get the right placement, and I am going to have to cut off part of this. So while it's hot, it's easier to manipulate. So I'm just cutting that corner right off. Hopefully you can see that. And while the wood you bend's hot, like I said, it does get a little bit, it gets a little bit kind of like, it's not putty, but it does get a little putty-like. You just want to push it really well into your piece. And I just want to make sure that I've got the same pattern here on this piece. I did stretch it out a little bit. So let me try to move that a little bit more. My thumbs are a little sore from putting this on today. You want to push it in as much as you can while it's still hot, so that it looks like it came on here. You don't want to look like you added it. You want it to just meld right into your piece. Oh, I know, the wood you bend is fabulous. I love how you can just change the entire look of furniture with wood you bend. And because you can, it's not, you can put it on curved areas. You can, I've got a flower swag. I'm going to end up cutting out flowers and rearranging them. So, you can use it like it is, or you can change it up. So I've got this pretty well stuck on my piece now. I've got it all melded in, but I do have some glue that's sticking out here. So I'm just going to, with my Mr. Bottle Mist, my brush, it's just a cheapo art brush, and I'm just going to run that wet brush around the edges so I can kind of dilute that glue, and so you don't see that. And you want to push it in really good because you want that excess glue to push out as well. So that looks good there. So we've got that piece on. That wasn't too bad. And, oh, hey, Dana from Georgia. So I've got the last piece here, and this is also in the product list in the description. It's just a small applique, and I'm going to put it on the foot down here. This is a really rounded piece, and this is a small applique, so I want to make sure that this one gets nice and heated up so it's going to hold that bended shape once I start sticking it on. Yeah, the wood you bend is really easy to work with too, because you can really mold it into anything that you want or any piece that you want to put it on. Oh, exactly, Dixie Belle. Perfect way to describe it. It's the jewelry. It's the accessories. Hey, Tarek, how are you? All right, so we've got it pretty heated up. I'm going to do it a little bit more. Sometimes these corner pieces are a little harder for me to get on. Let's see here. Again, just put your wood glue on. I put mine on very liberally. I want to make sure that it sticks and I don't have any issues later. And it's really easy to clean up that excess glue. So you're going to see my measuring now. So the other applique, I did put it in the center of this line running up here, and I put it 2 fingers down. So that's kind of my measuring. So we're going to put this right on the corner. I'm going to center it. Make sure I got it in the same place as the other one. And I'm going to start bending it around. I do want to hold this one in place a little bit longer, just because it is, this particular shape is very different from the shape of the wood you bend, and it's small. So I want to hold it down until it cools a little bit, and we'll hold that shape and not come up here. I've lost the comments, so actually while I'm still pushing this down, I'm going to pull those back up. And it just takes a minute to hold this on. Alright, so I've got the comments back. I'm a little behind though, so you may not see any questions right away. So hopefully you guys can see down here. And I'll bring you in for a closer look. So it's pretty well holding its shape. I want to go ahead and now I've got a lot of excess glue that I used here. Just want to go in and clean that up. So just wet that brush down. You can see how easy it takes off this excess. You can use like baby wipes or something like that as well, but this, using the paintbrush, to me, it's just a lot easier to get into. A lot easier than the baby wipes. Sometimes I can't always get my fingers into those little smaller spots here. Oh, thank you, Lori. This is Stormy Seas, which is the darker color on the outside. And we'll get into that in just a minute. But this is Stormy Seas, and then we have the Gulf in the center, and then some lighter highlights with Fluff. So let's see here. I've got a lot of the excess glue cleared off. Now, I will tell you, there's a couple things I could do with this. I could actually tape this down. You can also clamp it on. But I'm actually just going to hold this left side a little bit longer. Just to make sure that it gets nice, a nice good bond with my piece. Now, one thing you can do, like if you're not pushing it down and you don't get that good bond, and let's say one little edge popped up, when you go to paint that, you'll see where it's kind of pulled away if you make that error. Just an easy fix for that is some Dixie mud. You can just put some Dixie mud right down in that little crack or crevice there and fill it in, and you'll never know the difference. Your wood you bend will still look like it's bonded to your piece. So that's just a little kind of quick fix tip. And how I'm doing this, you know, there's a lot of different ways that you can work with the product. So this is just kind of my way to do it. But you know, everybody has some really nice good tips and tricks on these. So I've got that stuck on really well. So that's all set. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll move over to this side and we'll go ahead and start painting. I just wanted you to see kind of how you could work with that wood you bend and put it on and really transform your piece. Just want to make sure I'm not missing any. So Brenda asked, why didn't I paint before gluing it on? So there's no really hard and fast rule that I have for that. A lot of times I glue it on first before I ever paint, or sometimes if I'm using a primer, I'll put the primer on and then do the wood you bend and then paint it. And I like doing that because it's, you know, you've got more coats to get into all your cracks and crevices to make sure you don't miss anything. In this case, I'm not 100% sure where I'm going with this piece in the end. And I wanted to kind of get my color layout because I have to match it with several other pieces in the same room. So that's why I went ahead and painted it first. And then that's how I decided on, you know, what wood you bend I wanted to use and kind of where I was going with my design as well. So that, hopefully that answers your question, but there's no hard and fast rule as far as that's concerned. So the first thing I want to do actually on here, I kind of pushed this all over. I want to go ahead and get this. So this has my first coat on here. It was the color layout. But I want to go ahead and start painting down here and get some highlights on this. So that way when I go in and do my second coat, it's completely done. So when you're painting around wood you bend or a lot of moldings, it can be kind of difficult to kind of get in all those grooves and to do it quickly. So I'm going to actually be using the Dixie Belle French tip brush. And this brush is kind of rounded on top. It had a little point, but I've used it a lot. So it's kind of rounded on top, and that just makes it a little better to be able to dab into those. Another key to that is using water. Because it'll dilute the paint and it'll allow it to run into all those groove details a little bit better. So while I'm doing that, I also want to highlight the wood you bend because the more layers that you have on it, and in the end, I'm going to end up using mousse on it, but the more layers you have on it, the more depth that you add to it. And they do show through. So it does make a big difference. So we're going to start off with Stormy Seas, which is the dark gray color here. Well, it's a dark blue gray color, excuse me. Here's a paint stick with it on there. Kind of give you an idea of what the color looks like. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell with the lighting on a video. Let's see, would the heat affect the paint if you painted the wood you bend first? It depends on what paint you use, really. It might bubble up a little bit, but it'll go right down if it's the chalk mineral paint. But if you are doing anything with metallics, you can damage those metallics. Those will really bubble up if you do that first. But I have actually painted it first with chalk mineral paint. I think I've only done that once though. I find it difficult when I paint it first. You know, it's just messy. It's all over your hands. Well, at least for me it is. I get paint all over my hands and everything else. That's okay, Angie. She said she forgot to get the quilt blocks because I'm thinking of doing some hand painting in some quilt blocks up here so it'll kind of match the other piece. But that's a step that we're going to do later, and I am going to do the detail work on a live as well, so you guys will also see that. So I'm just going to go ahead and start painting. I'm going to try to watch the comments too while I do this. So this one's still wet, so I'm not quite going to start there. Just going to start going through here. And like I said, it is really just all about getting in the details, and the easiest way to do that is to keep your paint wet. And I only want to do 2 coats. So this coat is mainly about the coverage and then getting some other colors in here to highlight it as well, just to start getting that layering effect going on for the depth in it. And I just want to make sure that I get in the bottom here pretty good too. Oh, hey, Stacy. All right. So if you guys have any questions about anything else too, I'm happy to answer those. Kind of want to try to stay out of the way of the camera so you can see this. And I'm just kind of scrubbing the paint in here and spraying it pretty liberally. And actually, while I'm doing this, I kind of skipped over and got started. I always feel like I have so many things that I want to get through on the lives that sometimes I forget to talk about how I actually prep the piece. So for this piece, I did go ahead and strip the top because I am going to use an oil-based no-pain gel stain on there. So I did go ahead and strip the top. I also cleaned it with White Lightning, which is a Dixie Belle product. It's really important that you prep your piece so that you can do a wonderful paint job on it, but if you don't clean it properly, you run into some issues with your paint sticking. You definitely don't want to skip that step. And the White Lightning, it's a TSP-based cleaning solution. So it gets off just grease, grime. It's specifically for painting to clean pieces to prep. So I cleaned it with that, and I did scruff up my piece with a 120 grit sandpaper because the original finish was very much intact, and it was just a little too slick, and I didn't want to do the slick stick, so I just went ahead and roughed it up a little bit, and then I put this first coat on. I did do a little bit of repair with the Dixie mud. I kind of noticed that as I painted it. A lot of times when you start painting, you'll start seeing all the flaws in furniture that you never noticed before. So that was just a quick repair that I did there. Oh, hey, Mary Jim, how are you? Oh my gosh, I miss you guys so much. Thank you. So now we're just going to go ahead and get this last little bit out of the way. We're going to come back through, we'll highlight these, and then we'll work on some of the blending at the top here. Oh, hey, Karen, I just saw you on there too. All right, so let's see. I just want to make sure you guys can see where I'm at here. And we're just getting in. So I've been spraying my brush as I'm doing this. I've been spraying the brush and the piece just to make it easier, like I said, to get in all of these little grooves. And one thing that this is going to save me by doing this now and giving the extra attention to this wood you bend, it's going to save me a little bit of time later because I won't necessarily... A lot of times when you're using wood you bend, it just really doesn't pop unless you glaze it. But you can also paint in the shading. So that way you don't necessarily have to go in and do that glazing to make it pop. You can just paint the pop in, so to speak. So that's why I'm using this dark color here and just making sure I really get down in all the details and just scrub the paint in there. I just want to make sure you can see here. Oh, thank you. I'm hoping to be back so soon. I really want to. Let's see here. All right, so we just got a little bit more to go and we'll get on to the more interesting part. So I just want to make sure you guys can still see. And we're just scrubbing. It really doesn't take a lot of paint to do this. It goes a long way because you are wetting it down so much. But the coverage is still great with the Dixie Belle paint. It's a really nice plus side to it as well. Just making sure I'm getting underneath here in. And actually, I'll go in and get that other Would You Bend applique on the corner a little bit later. Oh, hey, Connie from Waco. How's the weather down there? It's here. We're in northern Alabama. We usually have pretty good weather, but it's been kind of really cold here. All right, so now what I want to do with the Would You Bend, and it's still a little bit wet, but that's okay. I want to come back in with the Golf, which is the second color I'm using. It's the same color that we blended in up here. I'm going to come back in with that, and I want to go ahead and highlight. Oh, thank you, Cindy. You know, Stormy Seas and Vintage Duck Egg are my two favorites. I've not used Stormy Seas with the Golf before now, and I'm loving how it's turning out. And I picked the Stormy Seas too because I know I'm going to come in with this red at the end. So that's why I went, that's why I added the Stormy Seas in, because I just thought it would offset that well. So all I did was take a little bit of the Golf. I just put it on an art brush here. And I'm just going to kind of dry brush. Well, it's still a little bit wet. So it's not 100% dry brush. It's a little bit of both. It's doing a little bit of blending here. And it's also doing a little bit of dry brushing in the spots that are already a little more dry. And that's okay, because like I said, all I'm doing is getting the layers here. You'll see I'm just slapping my brush along, and that's fine. You're not really worried about, are you getting it, you know, off of the Would You Bend or anything like this. This is just adding layers. You don't have to overthink it. I'm just feathering my brush across this Would You Bend. And that's all that I'm doing here. Oh, it's chilly, yeah. I know we had one day where I think it got down into the 20s, and that just really doesn't happen this time of year. All right, so let's put a little bit more on here. It's okay if you have it thicker in some areas, because we have lots of layers going over this still. And I will come back and do dry brushing on it. So it's really going to build up and look like it was on here for a long time. It's going to authentically look old. So we're just, and you see I just got some all the way up there. That's no problem. Again, I just want to give these as many layers to create as much detail as I can. Again, very little paint. And you're just feathering your brush over the highlights. That's it. And you'll see as we work on this piece over the next couple weeks how it's going to change and the different phases. It always looks horrible before it looks good. All right, so now I've got the Golf on here. I also want to come through with some Fluff. So I've got my Fluff in one of the 4-ounce containers. But it's white, but it's kind of got, it's not quite as white as cotton. It's got a little gray base to it. Oh, thank you, Beth. All right, so let's see here. So we're just going to come back. I'm doing the same thing with the Fluff along here. You can see how it makes this stand out. And normally when I would dry brush, so if this was the last layer and I was doing this, I would actually wipe my brush on a paper towel so that I would get the excess paint off. And I'm barely dipping. I'm using the same brush I used for the Golf. But normally I would get the paint, I'm going to make sure you can see. I would take the paint off, the excess paint off with a paper towel, and then just lightly layer it on. But because I have so many layers to go, I'm just brushing it along. No particular worry about that. All right. So we're just coming over. Let me check the time right quick. I think I have enough time that we'll get to some blending here, but Let me kind of quickly try to move along a little bit. Like I said, I'm not worried about whether it's getting only on the woodgie buns. We're just going over it to give it that depth and those highlights. And you'll notice whenever we come back, when I bring you in for the close-up, over here it was a little drier, and you can see kind of how that effect is a little bit different from where I started over here, and it was still a little bit wet from that first initial coat of the Stormy Seas. But this goes pretty quickly. All right, so I've got those all done, and so I've got a little bit of time. I think we'll be okay. We'll go ahead and just start. We'll blend down this center first, and then if we have time, I'll come over here and do that. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and start on the side over here, and then we'll work our way back to the middle. Let me go ahead and get set up. So when I'm doing the blending on here, I'm doing my second coat. Normally, it would only take me 2 coats with the blend, but on this first layer, I was mainly laying out my color, so I didn't do a lot of blending. So this may be a 3-coat project. I'll kind of see how it feels as I go along, and you guys can kind of see how that goes as well. So what I've got is I'm going to use 3 different brushes for each color, and then I also have a blending brush here. So for Stormy Seas, I don't have a lot of that. I'm going to use an oval small brush. It is a Dixie Belle synthetic brush, so it's going to lend itself to blending in no brush strokes. Dixie Belle's a self-leveling paint too, so that helps as well. But I would definitely say use a synthetic brush for this process. So for the oval medium, I'm going to go ahead and use that with the Gulf because I have large areas of the Gulf I'm putting on. Now I'm just doing some quick highlights with the large round brush in the Fluff. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and spray it all down. We work in small sections because the Dixie Belle paint does dry very quickly. And in order to meld these colors together, we definitely need to keep them wet. So I want to make sure you guys can see. I'm going to pull you over a little bit. So I'm just going to do a couple layers of spray, water spray with the mister bottle. And then I'm going to go ahead and start laying out my Stormy Seas up here. And what I'm doing is for my dark color, I want to keep it where my shadows would be. And you do work pretty quickly with this. I am trying to do a slight pattern on here, so I'm not just doing the highlight with where the shadows would be. I'm kind of bringing it in for the highlight, kind of at a diagonal, because I want to bring the focal point with the other designs I'm putting on here. I want to bring the focal point into this middle section. So that's why I'm running the paint down this way. And then now that I've got that on, I'm going to go ahead and coat the rest of this section in the Gulf. And right now I'm just throwing the paint on. I am not trying to brush it out. I'm just getting it on here so that I can do the blend. Okay, so now I kept these colors separate up here, but for my Fluff, I just want that to be a highlighted accent. So I am going to take that and I'm going to put it right over. I'm going to end up blending it right into this Gulf to more or less change the color of the Gulf to just give it that highlight. But I am keeping my low light with the Stormy Seas. I am keeping that. I want to blend that into the Gulf. So to blend, I'm just going to work my brush in several different directions just to bring all these colors together. And I do wipe off in between as I notice I'm dragging colors where I don't want them to be. Now, I do have some highlights, and you'll see that when I bring you in closer. There are some highlights here that will naturally come in some of the darker areas, and that's great. You're actually giving it more dimension, more depth. It looks more natural when you do bring those, when you bring those all together and then you have those highlights. So all I'm doing right now is just lightly feathering my brush over my colors to make sure that they are all blended nicely together. I may add a little bit more of a highlight over on this side just because I want to bring that fluff up. One thing too, this is a very wet process, so the paint dries at different intervals. So when you look at it right now, it'll still look like the paint lines are more separate than they are as it dries overnight. And that's why on my page, and I've got a link posted to my Facebook page, on my page, I will post a picture of how this actually turns out once it's completely dry, so you can see how all those colors just come so easily together. All right, so we're just gonna move a little bit down to the next drawer. I'm gonna end up getting this side over here a little bit later. I just can't, these drawers are pretty wide, and if I go over to that side too much, you can't kind of see the paint area here. So we're just gonna go ahead and spray the second drawer so it's nice and wet. If you feel your paint pulling as you're blending, add more spray. Because you do want to keep this paint so it's just gliding on. That's definitely, it's definitely the term I would use. You just want the paint to glide and pull together. So I've got this a little bit darker. I'm bringing it into that diagonal right here. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put the gulf in the middle. Bring some up here. I don't think I got that earlier. And I'm bringing the gulf all the way over. You can kind of see how much paint I'm using. I'm bringing it all the way over to kind of line up with that Stormy Seas. It's a little bit overlap, but not too much. If you are trying to blend and you're having a hard time, one of the easiest ways to begin, in my opinion, is to actually overlap the colors a little bit. That will help bring them together. So I'm just adding, again, coming back with the fluff, and I'm just adding this in the center part to get some of those extra highlights. And I'm just brushing that in. So now I'm gonna come back with my blending brush. I never put paint on my blending brush. I'm just gonna go ahead and wipe it off because you want as much excess paint off as you can. I'm gonna spray this a little bit more just because it takes me a little longer when I'm talking to blend, so it gives that more time to dry out. And the first thing I'm doing is just coming over and I'm pulling this Stormy Seas into the Gulf. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. And you can see how it's brushing over. After each stroke, I'm wiping it off. So I'm not pulling that paint the other way. Now I'm gonna come up. I'm just going in whatever direction that I see that it needs to come together. So your piece is really how you want it to look, and your personal preference really determines the direction that you want to pull your paint. It's not always one direction. You just want that soft, soft line. And like up here, that kind of dried out. I can just wet that area down. It kind of reactivates the paint enough for me to kind of pull it together. And I'm very lightly feathering. You're not scrubbing your paint on or anything like that. It's a very light feather. And I'm gonna pull this white and this gulf together quite a bit. So the more layers you add to, the more blended your look becomes. The more blended layers. So there we go. And it always looks so different on camera, and I think that's from the lighting than it does in person. My lines actually look very soft in person, and you'll be able to see that in the picture as well. So you just want to bring all those colors together. All right, so now we're just going to touch on this bottom spot. Hey, Brenda from Australia as well, and Patricia from Illinois. Hey, Stephanie. I know it's been a little while since I've been on this page, but I used to recognize everyone. I'm not seeing as many familiar names. All right, so let me just check the time here. So I've only got about 5 more minutes. We'll go ahead and do this bottom drawer here really quickly. And then I will probably have to go off. I do want to pull the gulf a little bit further over here. I don't want the diagonal to be quite as far in as I originally had it. So just going to keep that in mind as I'm doing this layer here. And actually, I'll try to bring you guys in really quick. Let me hurry up and do this. If I don't have enough time, I'll just stop and pull you guys in and finish this last drawer later. You know, that's it. This is just paint. You know, if you mess up or you don't like what you've done, you can always just repaint it. So if I need to stop a little sooner, I can do that. It's not a big deal here. There we go. So we're just going to come back in with the gulf. I'm going to run the gulf, so I'm going to overlap this a little bit. You can kind of see how it'll be a little bit easier to blend that together when it's overlapped. I'm going to bring some of that light down a little further. Some of this a little bit more over here. Right, and then we're just going to bring in some of the fluff right in the middle. And my paint is pulling a little bit, so that's why I sprayed again, just to get it nice and wet. That paint should glide. If it starts pulling, add more water. All right, so I'm back to my blending brush. And when you originally start, you kind of want your blending brush to be, dry, but it does pick up stuff along, it does get wet along the way. Sometimes I do switch my blending brushes out. Like if I was doing this piece straight through tonight, I would probably switch my blending brush about halfway through just so I could have a clean brush, because it does change kind of the way it blends. So I think that's going to be good enough for now. I'm sure I will be doing a third coat on this anyway, just because I didn't blend that first coat. So there we go. All right, so got that done. I am going to go ahead and bring you in so you can kind of look at the wood you've been down here and see how those highlights were done. Again, it always looks bad before it looks better. So this is just the first coat going on this wood you've been down here, the first layer. But once it's done, I do stage and post pictures on my Facebook page. So if you follow me on Facebook, you'll be able to kind of see the changes that it goes through and see if you're working on your own piece. You can kind of see what you want to incorporate and what you don't want to use. To get the final look that you're going for. So for the blending brush, I'm actually using the Dixie Belle Mini, which is, if you are just getting your brushes, this is probably the very first one I would recommend getting, just because it's really versatile. It's shorter than the other brushes. It is a synthetic brush. And you know, especially if you're not as comfortable with painting or you haven't painted as much furniture, most people are comfortable with the flat brushes. So I would definitely say if you're just looking for a brush or one brush, I would start off with this one. I've been out of stock for months. Dixie Belle has been out of stock since COVID. There's an issue with, I guess, the bristles or whatever. So they come in kind of randomly. But let me go ahead and bring you guys in because I think I just may have, I'm a little bit over on my time, or I'm getting close to being over. So let me go ahead. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and pull you down so that you can kind of see a close-up. So when you're closer up, you can kind of see how those colors come together. See, of course, this is just the one that's not blended, but you can see how much softening comes into play. When you're way back there on the camera, you don't necessarily see that softening. So now down here, this is where you see the would you bend and kind of see those highlights. You can see how random they are, how in places I did get the paint. Whoops, sorry. How in places I did get the paint back here. That's okay. All of that adds to it. And this is just the center applique as well. So you can kind of see what that looks like. All right, so I'm going to bring you guys back up. Like I said, I will be doing more lives on this piece with the detail work and everything. I think next Friday I'm on the Chalk Paint 101 page, and next Sunday night I'll be on here. I'm not sure if I'll be working on this piece then or not. It just kind of depends on how far I get. But thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight. It was so good to see everybody or hear from everybody I haven't seen in a long time. And thank you so much. Have a good night. Take care.